I have a gift for you.
My goodness.
Because you always make lemonade out of situations. It's a metaphor, but also you can use it.
I love how Lil's like, it's a metaphor, but you can also use it if you want to.
Yeah.
What was she referencing? Like, is she referencing his brother's death? Because if that's what she was referencing, that's really funny. If she's like, you know what, you did a good job recovering from your brother dying. Here's a lemon because you made lemonade.
I don't know. Maybe it was just when I was watching it, it felt like it was kind of like framed that she could be referring to that. But I think it was about breaking up with Lindsay. I loved that the lemon was introduced as like Chekov's gun because Imrul at the dinner brings up.
She also brought him a lemon for their first date.
And the lemon is sitting right there waiting to go off on Carl and just like takes the bait.
So that was your first date with her?
First date.
Because it's come to my attention that you've been talking to her since last summer. Nope, she didn't message you last summer? You didn't meet her parents at a soccer game?
I did meet her parents at a soccer game.
And then what? They set you up with their daughter?
No.
So how did that go at that soccer game?
Hello and welcome to the Bravo Outsider Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Midwinter, joined as usual by Dylan Ferguson, and we are talking Summer House again. This was a really good one. Dylan, let's dive right in. What happened this episode?
Another really good one. They're on fire. So Lexi and Jesse have more or less smoothed over their disputes to start things off. Then after that, we move into a Shabbat dinner hosted by a singing Jesse Solomon.
Yeah.
Which is a staging ground for Lindsay to stage her attack on Carl based on the DM slide, whose timeline is unclear, which doesn't work out in her favor. And from there we move on to the next day. Carl is grieving the loss of his brother, and as everybody starts to kind of shift into
Life
party mode,
gives you lemons, hey?
and that's what they say. We sort of end up with, Jesse getting a bit questioned on his behavior towards Lexi, and then finally Paige fielding some tough questions from Ciara about where she's going in her relationship and whether she actually wants to continue to pursue things with Craig or not.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this episode quite a bit. I loved Jesse Solomon as an agent of chaos here, just, speaking out of both sides of his mouth in terms of like how he talks to Lexi versus how he talks to the rest of the house about Lexi. What was your overwhelming feeling throughout this episode?
I don't know. Like I said, I'm still liking this. This is really good. It's really well constructed. This is definitely kind of planting some seeds, bridging us over to, I guess, how things are going to play out, both between Paige and Craig and between Lexi and Jesse. I think we have to assume that Lindsay's going to plan something else too, now that she's fuming that her attack on Carl didn't work at all. So yeah, there's a lot of anticipation, I guess, going on in this, but also I'm just I was having a good time with the way it's all assembled. I think that the rhythm of it was really good. A lot of great choices in the editing, as we often see from this series. I love how they start things off with Paige talking about how she's like warmed up to Lindsay and how she appreciates how Lindsay will be completely wrong about something, but will act as if she's completely right and will not let go of that. They could have included that little observation from Paige after Lindsay kind of demonstrates it and falls on her face a bit at the Shabbat dinner by insisting that she's right, and then is presented with proof that everybody can see that she isn't. They could have provided that as context after, but instead they provide it as pre-context to kind of set the stage for how we're supposed to look at Lindsay going forward. But since that's also presented from the lens of like Paige being like, this is what I've learned from Lindsay, she's my teacher on this, it also helps color our perception of how Paige is acting in her relationship with Craig too. So I really like the choice to like lead things off with that. It kind of adds a framing both for Lindsay and for Paige that's put in the audience's mind right off the bat.
Yeah, that's a great point, because we get this almost immediately prefacing the conflict at the dinner table between Lindsay and Carl, but it does really frame how Paige is acting. She's got no fucks left to give. She's like over this relationship. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. There was something that really stuck out to me in the beginning of this episode, and I'm curious if you've got a read on it. When everyone was arriving at the house for the weekend, they made a very deliberate choice to show the pile of boxes at the front of the door and everyone talking about the boxes but not bringing them in. Everyone, as they are streaming in, they are neglecting their responsibility to bring in the boxes or the bags from the car. I'm curious if you read into that thematically at all.
Yeah, I hadn't really at the moment, but it's a good point. Definitely, yeah. I remember we have like Paige making comments about like, oh, it's awesome that I can leave bags and somebody else will pick them up. That's like something we get. We get those kind of comments a lot. I think usually will be followed up by like West being like trying to be a Boy Scout and being like, "Hey fellas, let's make sure we move the bags for everybody." But yeah, that's a good point that might be included for like thematic reasons, because like I pointed out, it does feel like there's some issues that are accumulated that will need to be resolved at some point, or will need to be addressed at some point. Probably not resolved, since very few things have a beginning, middle, and end, like Lindsay's attempt at attacking Carl did at the day. I think it was Ciara who said that, was like, after like he just shows us proof and they're like, oh wait, there's proof, and then Ciara's like, wow, that had a beginning, middle, and an end. That's just that thing just wrapped up right now. That never happens.
You're keying in on this conflict, and yeah, it was one of the centerpieces of this episode. How do you think overall it went for Lindsay and Carl? Like, how do you think it impacted their overall position within, the structure of the house, but also just their narratives this season?
Well, like I already mentioned, I think it's a clear failure on Lindsay's part. I think she fell on her face. I see why she would want to try to run with that. She needed something, and she felt like something was given to her. That the information that maybe there was a DM slide from Lil while they were still together. This was the thing that she like immediately grasped onto and was like, okay, I can work with this. I can run with this. It just the way that it played out just obviously played against her, because she overplayed her hand really by asking for a specific proof, and then got the proof of Carl's perspective rather than hers. I think, like I said, I mentioned already, I don't think she's going to be done with this. I think that she's just going to keep stewing about it and keep trying to look for something else that she can use against Carl, because it's important for her to show that Carl was the bad actor in this relationship, which is, as is the case with breakups, people try to find a way to show that they're right and the other person was wrong. That's how it goes. So for Carl, it ended up playing out really well in his benefit, not necessarily through any actions of his own, not because he necessarily played it very well.
Right.
He did have one moment that was like a little bit on the canny side, at least for him, when Lindsay was attacking him and she was like, oh, well, you're a terrible judge of character. And Carl kind of gestures towards her and is like, yeah, well, obviously. And that little moment was like, is about as close as he gets to like actually being
like scoring a point.
Actually scoring a point, exactly. Otherwise, like when he gets a little flustered, he's closer to overplaying his victory, and like he gets really close to just going too far and saying things. He almost oversteps, I think, when he says, "I pray for you," which is going a little far. Though he does not say, as somebody points out, somebody like relaying the conversation afterwards when he's going upstairs to check his phone, says that he said, "Y'all need Jesus," which he did not say, at least in what we see. And good thing he didn't say that. That would be an inappropriate thing to say at a Shabbat dinner. I think. Yeah. But he almost overplays his hand, I think, by going like with the, "Oh, I feel sorry for you." But otherwise, he mostly just like gets to be the like, I'm in the right, upstanding, you are attacking me and I have done nothing wrong perspective. And really, Lindsay inadvertently handed that to him. She gave him the opportunity to do that. And then I'm not accusing him playing this card, but the fact that the next day is like the anniversary of his brother's death, and that he has like a very emotional moment about that, just kind of reinforces his position as somebody that other people have like sympathies towards. Which is that's a separate thing, of course, but it's like but following the fact that he was like got to be in the right in the dinner the night before kind of gives him firm footing right now. So he's like on pretty firm footing, not necessarily because he played it like super well or anything. It just kind of got handed to him.
I think one thing that's really notable about this conflict was that Lindsay accepted that he had proof. She said thank you for the receipts and actually accepted this, as opposed to going harder, and that seemed to really play fairly well with the rest of the house. Like, I think we get a confessional from West about it, and everyone at the table is like happy to move on, and Ciara makes comment about the resolution. I don't think that Lindsay necessarily came off like in the negative after this conflict. I think she actually did make the most of this by scoring points, by accepting the evidence, and like being willing to move on. Obviously, her ideal situation was that she could take down Carl, but once that was off the table, the fact that she was able to, pivot and make the most of the situation, I think, was really good. But yeah, I'm curious what you think about how she's impacted.
Yeah, like I said, I think negatively, but I think she had no choice. She had no choice in the situation but to like it would have just been digging a hole if she tried to be, I don't know, tried to be like, oh, but then maybe there was another message sent through a different app or something. That would have, she recognized that would have been digging a hole at that point. That like there was kind of, this was a dead end, so it was the right choice to be like, okay, that's it then. Like there's no real turn I can make here. I've hit a wall. And but you're right, like the others do seem to take that in good stride. Wes in particular, as you mentioned, is like, pregnant Lindsay fucking rocks. Her boyfriend better knock her up again. So something about that he thought was fucking awesome. I'm not quite sure what part of that he's referring to, but Wes loved it, so that played well with him anyways.
Another thing that I really keyed in on during this Shabbat dinner was the seating arrangement of like Ciara and Lexi being right next to each other, positioned at like beside Jesse while he's delivering the prayer. I just really enjoyed the shot of him. Well, we see a shot while he's delivering the prayer of Ciara, like mouthing the words along to what he's singing. And just, I really enjoyed that they are playing up how in sync Jesse and Ciara are, as opposed to like, as a contrast to all the friction between Jesse and Lexi this episode. I'm really enjoying that contrast and that tension that's there. Did anything else stand out to you in terms of the presentation?
It's in terms of the presentation. If we could just like return to the moment where Carl is emotional in the morning, thinking about his brother who died. That's one of those moments where having the kind of static cameras that are kind of intruding on the privacy of the characters works really well. We have kind of a static camera watching him from behind until the guys start coming out. Imrul first, surprisingly, and then kind of the other guys all kind of sort of gather around, and they sort of awkwardly provide a little comforting bubble. I like having that little like congress of dudes that kind of cluster around the wounded member, and the way that they use that kind of static surveillance camera outside works well for that, for sure. Yeah, and there is also kind of a congress of the girls earlier too. There's a bit of a separation here. Usually there's like a lot of melding in the show between like guys and girls, not really on other sides. But this show, I mean, literally during the Shabbat dinner, they're literally separated from one side of the table and on the other. But we have earlier in the episode, we have kind of a congress of women talking to Lexi and sort of with concern, advising or listening to her, which is not quite the same thing as the boys comforting Carl, but it rhymes a little bit. Those two moments where the women gather around one of the women that they're worried about, and later on the men gather around one of the men that they're worried about. They kind of rhyme together. So I definitely picked up on that I liked. And I really like the way this episode ends too. While we're talking about the way it's presented, the aesthetics, I just wanted to highlight that too. It's having like Ciara kind of pull Paige aside as the sun's setting. They get to do a little bit of a slapstick adventure thing. They go to sit in a hammock and Ciara falls out of the hammock. But then when they finally do sit down, which is a good conversation, I'm sure we'll get to that very soon. Really like having Ciara's hand movements, her earnest hand movements foregrounded in the shot, Paige's reaction. And Paige has a very reactive face. You know, Paige is always a great person to have reacting to listening to people on camera because she has great expressions so having her react to the way that Ciara is interrogating her a little deeper in the frame and a little closer in the frame, just having the gestures of Ciara's hands as we have a bit of a over the shoulder kind of shot that was like as the shadows are kind of deepening, and then in the deep background there's just a little hint of the other people starting to shift into party mode. That was the kind of scene where I was just like, yeah, this is good stuff. Like this is really selling it for me. This is good shot choices right here.
Yeah, totally. I brought up the boxes at the beginning of this episode that I really liked. I feel like there is maybe a bit of a theme surrounding responsibility and what you're responsible for within a relationship during this episode, because we see, well, that's the core of the conflict between Lindsay and Carl, where they're talking about, you know, what do you owe someone in a relationship? And we also have the conflict between Jesse and Lexi that we're pretending that is resolved right now, but this idea about like responsibility within a relationship, we also
his Instagram follows.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I really like this idea, this theme of responsibility within this episode. And I also, like you mentioned, the scene where Carl is outside. I really like how they kind of pay lip service to the idea of like emotionally supporting each other within like male relationships, and then awkwardly it gets into this meta about male friendships and how men often are really guarded about their emotions, and they use that as a way to like themselves be guarded instead of actually talking about the emotions that Carl is having. They're talking about how men deal with emotions in order to avoid actually talking about their emotions. So I really like that moment quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any questions that you're dying to see resolved in the next episode?
How is Lexi and Jesse going to end? That's the kind of question that I'm interested in. I do not give them a full season as a couple. I do not think they make it to the finale. So the question is, how does it end? Is it Jesse just like straight up sleeping with Ciara and everybody knows? It's got to be Jesse doing something, because Lexi is just in so deep. And I do feel for her too. Absolutely. Like when she says like, oh yeah, after we had our little dispute or whatever at the kickball game, she's like, I basically cried for 2 days. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, like you cried for 2 days, and now like what's it gonna be when
but
like,
everyone gets two
happens?
Chances with me.
yeah, for sure, Lexi. I'm sure, yeah. And then and the way she like starts to like blame Imrul for like the toe sucking is clearly she's doing all kinds of mental gymnastics to not blame Jesse for what Jesse is entirely responsible for, his own behavior. She is so invested in this. And I do feel bad for her because Jesse is totally encouraging this too. Like he's in over his head in a way too, that he doesn't know how to manage her expectations within a relationship. So the only thing he can think to do is capitulate to making their bond deeper and digging them deeper into this hole together and being like, okay, oh, you're mad at me, okay, I guess then you'll have to meet my parents. Like you'll if he keeps doing this, eventually he'll just be like, now you're really mad at me because I slept with somebody else. Well, I guess I'm gonna have to get out the ring and engage to you. Like, God damn it,
guess we're gonna have to have kids.
Yeah, like he does not know how to be like, this isn't actually that serious for me, so we're gonna have to learn to create a space that is like has like managed expectations and we're gonna have to learn how to take things a little more slowly and kind of figure things out a little bit. He doesn't know how to do that, how to have that conversation, so he's just like, shit, well, I guess I love you extra much and we're gonna have to make this even more serious. And then that's just gonna build up more resentment in him towards her because he feels like that she's making him do this stuff when this is just the way he's reacting because he doesn't know like what else to do. And the only person who's happy about this is West, because West is jealous as hell. Like West wants this relationship to be broken up because West absolutely clings to Jesse as like his support. Like their friendship is like so important to his position in the group, I think, in West's own eyes, that like you can see what like near the start where West is in the back seat of the car, third wheeling scene again. He's absolutely not saying things like, well, you guys just got to work it out and I'm sure it'll be fine. He's saying things like I don't have the exact quotes, but he's saying stuff like, yeah, well, like if Jesse just feels like this isn't the right time for him, then it's not going to work out. It's not going to be a thing. Like he's completely just blithely being like, yeah, well, probably isn't going to work then. Yep, you guys probably going to break up, guys. Probably going to like that's what he wants to have, and he's so excited,
like making them feel stupid for like introducing Lexi to Jesse's parents.
Exactly, yeah, and he's so excited, West, when Jesse comes to talk to him about the relationship. He's so excited, first, that Jesse is relying on him, of course, because that's what he wants, but also because then he can provide his counsel, and his counsel is going to be to try to push Jesse away from Lexi, because he wants his bunkmate. He wants his bunkmate to have an empty bed again, because again, such a third wheel. He's like literally sitting in a bed next to them while they're starting to make out, and he's just being like, just riffing like Toe Rogan over here, Edgar Allan Toe, and they're like, man, we want to fuck. Like, Jesus Christ, dude.
Okay, so this episode we also got a very unceremonious goodbye to Lil, as far as I know.
Lil. Yeah, this is definitely going to be the last we see of her. Presumably, it would be awesome if there was a Lil comeback, but seems like the lemon cooked her.
Yeah, I loved that the lemon was introduced as this like Chekov's gun. I didn't realize it at the time. I'm like, oh, that's like a weird, quirky little thing. Maybe it's some sort of token, but it ended up being like a Chekov's gun. Far. Because Imrul at the dinner brings up, oh yeah, she brought Jesse a lemon, because when life gives you a lemon, and the lemon is sitting there like right there waiting to go off on Carl, and just like takes the bait. I just thought I thought it was brilliant. I loved it so much.
Yeah, it was great. And I love how Lil's like, it's a metaphor, but you can also use it if you want to.
Yeah.
What was she referencing? Like, is she referencing his brother's death? Because if that's what she was referencing, that's really funny. If she's like, you know what? You did a good job recovering from your brother dying. Here's a lemon because you made lemonade.
I don't know. Maybe it was just when I was watching it felt like it was kind of like framed that she could be referring to that. But I think it was about like breaking up with Lindsay and that relationship ending.
That makes more sense.
I have to assume that it wasn't that malicious.
Yeah, it is great though. It's hilarious to me that Carl, who's a pretty boring guy, was just like willing to just overlook all her quirky behavior because he's just like, she's interested in me. That's what matters. And then this like just one, as soon as she does prop comedy, as soon as she brings out a prop, he's like, oh man, I can't deal with this. Yeah. All right, Pilo.
Do you have any quotes that stand out to you?
I really like how at some point somebody asks Amanda like what Carl's up to, and he's like, he's been practicing DJing with sunglasses on, and he's practicing DJing with sunglasses on. That's such a Carl thing. It's just great. He's just in the other room, just saying,
Kyle,
like, yeah, Kyle. Sorry, I said Carl. Yeah. It's just such a Kyle thing to be to do, and he's just so adorably simple. I love the man so much, and it is kind of heartbreakingly sweet how at the Shabbat dinner, like, what's something you're thankful for this week? And he's like, my girlfriend held my hand on the plane.
Yeah.
Good for you, buddy.
Do you have any other highlights that we haven't gone over?
That we haven't gone over. Yeah, we've gone through a lot of it. I do. Okay. While we're talking about quotes, I do kind of like Paige diagnosing Lexi by saying that Lexi's being a little too Canadian. And I was wondering if you agree with that diagnosis. Do you think Lexi is just being too Canadian, or is she just being too 26-year-old? Those are the two diagnoses that Paige offers, that she's too Canadian and she's too 26 years old. Both valid reasons for why she's acting
I didn't get the Canadian thing. What is that supposed to mean? What is that supposed to mean?
Well, I think she means that she's being too naive, that she's being too trusting, too open, too guileless. And yeah, I that's the way I interpret it anyways.
Is that what we are known for?
I mean,
leave a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, on the topic of quotes and Lexi, the confessional that we got from her where she says, it's not that I don't trust Jesse, but why would I 100% trust Jesse right now? I thought was really, really good. I think that I don't know if she's naive or if she's just like really optimistic. I don't know. What do you think?
Too Canadian. That's definitely. No, but really though, I think I really like when Paige is talking about it near the end when she's kind of overhearing Jesse and Wes discussing Lexi, and she kind of can't help but in and be like, this is she's younger than you are. Her behavior isn't unreasonable. She's just like young, and that's what you should expect. And you can't like just treat her as being like crazy and making wacky demands when that's like actually normal behavior. Paige says something like, when I was 26 years old, I was like showing up at people's houses and pounding at the door and saying, I know you're in there. Saying that you should probably unfollow those women you followed on Instagram is like moderate 26-year-old insecurity. And honestly, I think that's the right read. Totally. Like that's why I'm not like criticizing Lexi for her behavior here, because, well, like I said, for one thing, Jesse is so encouraging of it, and instead of like trying to manage expectations, is just like try to make their relationship deeper and encouraging her to trust him more and more, even though she can see with her own eyes she shouldn't, but doesn't want to because she's blinded by really adoring this relationship and wanting it to work. But like, yeah, she obviously has less experience than he does. That's normal. She's younger than him, and like that kind of like insecurity is pretty normal behavior, actually, and that's something that you should have to as the partner of her, like manage and work with, and not just be like, oh, what the hell is she up to? You know, those crazy Canadians or whatever. So I actually really liked Paige's intervention there. I thought that was like needed to be said and was like well said.
Yeah. So last week we were talking a little bit about Lexi's edit and whether or not she is getting painted as being overbearing and a little bit crazy. I'm wondering if your opinion on this has changed at all after watching this episode. Do you think that the edit is leaning into this idea of Lexi being overbearing, or do you still think that it's fairly balanced?
Yeah, my perspective is that it's fairly balanced, but that's more my perspective on her, I guess. When I do try to think of like the specific like moments of confessional that they include, you highlighted one there. I highlighted the one that they include her saying that she basically cried for 2 days straight. Like, yeah, they are including sentences that she says that make her sound a little over obsessed with a relationship, which could definitely be seen as them like trying to paint her as being unhinged and like unreasonable. It's an interesting question. It's always an interesting question. Like, what is just like the audience interpretation? What is the choices that are guiding us into a certain way or not? I think that having the other voices in the cast is what really makes it feel more balanced, more so than the framing on the show. So I guess like if we didn't have Paige's comments that I just highlighted about like putting some context on her, like, you know, that this is the way women are when they're 26 years old often and stuff. That's then I think you could say like, yeah, the show is being too harsh on the way that they're presenting her. So yeah, I think you could make the argument that the edit is being unkind to her. But with the full context of the show and having the other character's perspective included, it feels more balanced to me.
That makes a lot of sense. I do think that we are getting more moments where Lexi seems very naive and clingy or whatever than like balancing moments. We do get Paige's read, but that's really the only example. We got a really emphasized scene of Lexi coming out and talking with the girls and saying, you know, oh, Jesse was flirting with Ciara. There's such like they've got a brother-sister dynamic. I can't see it. And it's punctuated by a cough from Ciara and then a glance from Paige where she's, you know, clearly suspect of it. And I do think that they are definitely leaning into painting Lexi a certain type of way, but she's also doing this to herself a little bit here.
Yeah.
And
yeah, you're right. I mean, to be clear, like I think she is naive and over her head. I don't think she isn't. It's just that, like, my take is that it's not unreasonable behavior with the context of everything else, with her being in this new relationship with like an older, more experienced, very charming man who is encouraging her to be that way. Like, that's basically my take. Like, I think that she is being very Canadian, and so it is fair to paint her that way. I'm just going to keep using Canadian as a shorthand for that.
What other highlights do you have?
We pretty much went over through all the bits that I like best. So what about you? What did you pick up? Anything we haven't mentioned yet?
No, I don't think I've got anything that we haven't really mentioned yet. We can dive into our stars. Dylan, who are your stars from this episode?
You know, I did like this episode from Paige a lot. For the reason I've mentioned, I like her intervening in the conversation about Lexi. I like her sort of getting information from Lexi and kind of wanting to guide her, but also figure out what's going on. I definitely like her conversation with Ciara at the end, where Ciara kind of pushes her to admit that maybe her frustrations about Craig are more to do with her changing perspective on Craig than actual Craig's behavior. I think Ciara had a good line there where she says like, okay, why are you putting it on him? And I read that not in a sense of like, oh, why are you blaming him for everything? But like, why are you framing this all in terms of things that he's doing and things that he is saying, when it kind of feels to me like this is your perspective that has changed.
You're the one that has changed. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what you're struggling to come to terms with, is how your perspective on the relationship and on him has changed. And that's the real subject here. And that's what you need to be thinking hard about. I might have just talked myself into giving Ciara a star too, because she was actually really good in this too.
Yeah. But,
yeah. But let's give Paige number one. Really interesting to me. And again, a lot of great faces, good sunglasses. I'll give Ciara number two. I just talked myself into it. We don't have a ton of her here, but she's always good when she's on screen. I do like that sort of balancing act where, like you mentioned, she sort of syncs up with Jesse a little bit, and there are these little hints that it makes a lot more sense, her and Jesse, than Jesse and Lexi. Like, they are more on the same page. They are like probably have a similar age, maybe from a similar background. Neither of them are Canadian. Like there is like their vibe actually just matches better. And I like those little hints
chemistry.
Of that. There you go. To sum it up. And she has to kind of play that dance where like it's not her job to say, Jesse, like, no, don't be too affectionate towards me. You know, that's his job. She's not the one in a relationship, but she has that kind of dance where she like enjoys his company and is somewhat open to it as well, for sure, but doesn't want like to. She clearly like has sensitivity towards Lexi as well too, and doesn't want to completely detonate the relationship. Ciara's she's a smart person. She comes off as kind of canny and observant, and so even when she doesn't have a lot of screen time, she doesn't have a lot of like big conversation moments. You get a lot from her. So I'll give her a second star because I always like Ciara too. And let's give a third star to Lexi. I'll just give it. It'll all be for the ladies this week. Yeah, she's still good TV too. I'm kind of watching her like through my fingers, like with my eyes covered, because this is going to end really badly for her. but in the meantime, she does give some good lines, and she is pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, I think I've got the same 1 and 2 picks. Ciara, I thought, was great. I think that she's having a great season. Paige as well. This is a fantastic season for Paige. We're getting such a well-rounded performance from her in terms of like, she's just got a lot of depth to her character. She's involved in a lot of external narratives, and we're also getting her relationship arc. We're seeing it play out way more in depth than we got on Southern Charm. So I'm just like really appreciating that she's so open and willing to put things out on camera in a way that Craig seemed not willing to do on Southern Charm. So love that from Paige. Ciara, like you said, all the reasons she's in the mix. She's really a sounding board for Paige here. She's also got her own thing going in terms of the triangle between her, Jesse, and Lexi. She babysat a cat last week. We got to see a cat photo. Shout out to my cat people. Leave a cat emoji in the comments. Just like really love Ciara. I think she is one of, if not the smartest people in the house in terms of like how she navigates things socially. She feels like she has a very spot on read on where people are at, and just the way that comes across in all the conversations and how she navigates things. I just really love watching her play on a show where we don't have a lot of social strategy. Ciara is someone that I'm always watching for in terms of who she is talking to. She's not the most active person here, but she's always very well positioned with everyone. So I really enjoy what she brings to the table here. She's my number 2. And number 3, I am going to give it to Lindsay, just because, yes, she did, like, things didn't go the way she wanted at the dinner. She didn't get this big explosive mic drop moment. But I think that her pivot was really it was really smart. I think that she played the situation as best she could. She was really kind of set up by Gabby unintentionally in order to fail in this situation. She got pumped. She got really gassed up here. And when it was clear that it was not going her way, I think she managed that situation really well, and it played well. And she has not lost any ground against Carl. So I think that it gave us a really exciting scene. She didn't lose any position, and I just like to see her fired up and angry. So she gets a star here.
Yeah, good call.
So I think that about does it for this week. Next week we are going to be talking about Summer House as well as the premiere of The Valley. What are you looking forward to in The Valley this season?
Oh man, I was really surprised how much I liked the first season of The Valley.
Yeah, me too.
So I'm excited for everything. Probably most excited for Kristen, honestly. Let's see what storylines she's got cooking up there.
Yeah, I am excited for all of it. So we know that Jax and Brittany have split. So seeing how that plays out is going to be really interesting. Kristen is always good TV. And then we've got Jesse, who is maybe the most toxic person on the cast, returning post-divorce or whatever. Just really excited to see maybe one of the best villains on Bravo. Maybe in the top 5. So we'll see what we got.
I think they've teased some more Vanderpump alumni that are going to be shifting over too, right? So I think we might.
Oh yeah, I don't know if they're full time or not.
Yeah,
though.
I don't know if that's going to be like one episode cameos or what, but I'll be excited to see how the expanded universe continues to develop.
Yeah, I haven't even watched the preview for this, so I'm going in blind. Awesome. Well, that about does it for this week. Dylan, do you want to let people know where they can find you?
Yeah, for sure. You can find me writing about movies on Substack. Just look for my name, Dylan Ferguson.
And I'm Craig Midwinter. I am on Instagram at Bravo Outsider, on TikTok at Bravo Outsider. Barely posting. Don't bother following. Just hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube or your podcast platform of choice. Leaving us a comment helps us out a ton. Our last episode really did not do well in the algorithm. I think we talked about toe sucking too much, so I might have to censor that whenever we bring it up in this episode. But hitting the subscribe button does help us. For every time we mention toe sucking, I want one of you guys to hit subscribe. That's going to really help counteract what we have done to ourselves here. This hole that we have dug ourselves into. Until next week, keep on wifing.